This is the Castillo de San Marcos National Monument. It was built in 1672 to 1695 by the Spanish in St. Augustine, Florida. It's probably the greatest fortress in North America. Come join us for a tour.
Castillo de San Marcos was the last of a series of forts, many wooden structures, built on the site since the 1570s, when Spain founded St. Augustine. The site of the Castillo de San Marcos has experienced several military engagements. At a time when England was at war with Spain, on May 27th to 30th, 1586, Sir Francis Drake, in command of 23 ships and 2,000 men, assaulted the town of St. Augustine, forcing the Spanish soldiers to abandon the wooden fort and thence burn the fort and the entire town over a period of 3 days. About a century later, on May 28, 1668, English captain, pirate Robert Searle, attacked St. Augustine under the cover of night in retaliation for a recent Spanish attack on the pirate lair of New Providence, Bahamas. Searle killed 60 Spaniards and looted silver ingots, destroyed government buildings, churches, and homes, and kidnapped dozens of black citizens to bring into slavery. Mariana of Austria, who served as Queen's consort and regent of Spain for her infant son Charles, approved the construction of a masonry fortification. Construction began on October 2nd, 1672, and the fort was completed in 1695, consisting of 4 bastions. The fort was designed by Spanish engineer Ignacio Daza. The Castillo is constructed with 12-foot thick walls at the base and 7-foot thick walls on the upper ramparts. The fort is composed of coquina blocks mined from the King's Quarry on nearby Anastasia Island. Coquina is a soft limestone rock made from naturally cemented shells and would prove to be an excellent material in fortifications, as its surface was impervious to cannonballs. The Castillo is the largest masonry fort in the United States. In November 1702, during Queen Anne's War, English colonial forces under the command of Governor of Carolina James Moore laid siege to St. Augustine. 1,500 Spanish residents and soldiers sought refuge in the Castillo de San Marcos. English cannon fire had little effect on the walls of the fort, as the coquina simply absorbed the impact of the cannonballs. The siege was broken when a Spanish fleet from Havana arrived, trapping some of the English warships in the bay. The English sailors burned their ships in the harbor to prevent their capture by the Spanish, then marched overland back to Carolina, but not before setting fire to the town. Beginning in 1738, the Castillo's interior was redesigned under the supervision of Spanish engineer Pedro Ruiz de Alano, making rooms deeper and adding vaulted ceilings. The outbreak of the War of Jenkins' Ear in 1739 resulted in a new conflict between Spain and Great Britain. Governor and British General James Oglethorpe of the newly settled colony of Georgia launched an expedition against St. Augustine, appearing off the coast with a fleet of 7 ships in June 1740. 1,300 Spanish residents and 300 soldiers sought refuge inside the confines of the Castillo de San Marcos. The British bombarded the fort and town from their fleet and batteries on Anastasia Island for 27 days. As the cannon fire failed to impact the walls of the Castillo, Oglethorpe decided to starve the Spaniards into submission by blockading the Matanzas Inlet to the south. Ultimately, running low on supplies, Oglethorpe was obliged to abandon the siege and withdraw to Georgia. The terms of the Treaty of Paris, which ended the 7 Years' War in 1763, gave Florida to Great Britain, and the British formally took possession of the Castillo on July 21, 1763. The British renamed the Castillo de San Marcos Fort St. Mark. During the American Revolution, it was used as a military prison. Among those in prison was Lieutenant Governor Christopher Gadsden of South Carolina, and 3 signers of the Declaration of Independence who were captured when the British took possession of Charleston: Thomas Hayward Jr., Arthur Middleton, and Edward Rutledge. The Peace of Paris that ended the American Revolution in 1783 returned Florida to Spain, and Spanish troops returned on July 12, 1784. Spain inherited a Florida that was mostly devoid of Spanish settlers, with British citizens predominating. Border problems between the United States and Spain ultimately resulted in the Adams-Onis Treaty of 1819, which took effect on February 22, 1821, which transferred Florida to the United States as a territory. The United States changed the name of the Castillo de San Marcos to Fort Marion in honor of the American Revolutionary hero Francis Marion, the Swamp Fox. During the Second Seminole War, Seminole warrior Osceola was captured under a flag of truce near Fort Peyton, located about 13 miles southwest of St. Augustine, on October 21, 1837. Osceola was imprisoned at Fort Marion for a few weeks before he was transferred to Fort Moultrie in Charleston, South Carolina, in December 1837, where he died shortly after on January 30, 1838. Seminole chieftain Coacucci, also known as Wildcat, was also arrested under a flag of truce. While imprisoned at Fort Marion, Coacucci escaped, according to one version, with 19 other Seminoles by sliding between the bars of their cell after an extended fast, dropping from the walls into the moat outside the fort. On January 7, 1861, 3 days before Florida seceded from the Union, 125 troops of a secessionist militia unit called the St. Augustine Blues seized Fort Marion for the Confederacy. The U.S. military had withdrawn from St. Augustine several days earlier, leaving behind one man as caretaker of the fort, Sergeant Henry Douglas, who resided at the St. Francis Barracks. The St. Augustine Blues demanded that Douglas turn over the keys to Fort Marion, but Douglas only complied after his demand for a receipt from the secessionists, and the fort was turned over without a shot fired. During the early stage of the Civil War, Fort Marion was garrisoned by the St. Augustine Blues. General Robert E. Lee, who was in command of the coastal defenses of South Carolina, Georgia, and East Florida, ordered that most of the fort's artillery be shipped to more strategic forts, leaving Fort Marion with only 5 cannon. On March 11, 1862, Mayor Cristobal Bravo surrendered St. Augustine and Fort Marion to Commander Christopher Raymond Perry Rogers, who was commander of the screw frigate USS Wabash. Confederate forces had evacuated the town the previous evening. After the Civil War, numerous Native Americans were imprisoned at Fort Marion, including Chief Whitehorse of the Kiowa and Chief Graybeard of the Southern Cheyenne. Brigadier General Richard Henry Pratt supervised the Native American prisoners at Fort Marion during the 1870s. He promoted a program of assimilating Indian tribes into American culture, including teaching classes in the English language. In 1879, Pratt went on to found and serve as superintendent of the Carlisle Indian Industrial School in Pennsylvania. From 1886 to 1887, 491 Apaches were held prisoner at Fort Marion, including Geronimo's wife, while Geronimo himself was imprisoned at Fort Pickens, which was against the terms of his surrender. In 1898, 200 U.S. military deserters from the Spanish-American War were imprisoned at Fort Marion. In 1924, Fort Marion was designated a national monument, and its name was changed back to the Castillo de San Marcos in 1942. Today, 650,000 visitors annually come to experience the Castillo de San Marcos. Let's continue our tour of the fort.
So, defense in depth. You have the ravelin up front, the moat, and the fort under continuous attack. Since its construction began in 1672, Castillo de San Marcos has been under attack multiple times. This row is 6 cannon above the ravelin. It's a good collection of artillery here. sizzling salvo. So a furnace.
Okay. How long?
That's good. The last defense. This is a view from atop the Raveline, which is directly in front of the fort.
Shirt too.
Yeah, don't do that. Can I pick up the piece? Looks clear.
So the only one I saw.
Alright, so we're inside the tower. No way up though. Engulfed in flames. This was during the British siege of 1702. Spanish soldiers watch in horror as English troops set fire to their homes. They are helpless. The drawbridges are up. The soldier settlers and their families are sheltered within the crowded fortress. Except for a few rooms to house the guards on duty, the fort has no living quarters. During the nearly 2-month-long siege in 1702, the English failed to conquer the Castillo, but left St. Augustine in ashes. After the siege, the determined Spanish rebuilt their homes and added more defenses to protect their town. I'm keeping watch, looking for the pirates and the English, but nobody's showing up. Okay, so these are the barracks, sleeping quarters. This is Juan O'Donovan. He was a lieutenant in the Spanish Hibernia Irish Regiment. Ah, damn it. The Carcel Prison. It's pretty dreary in there. Five flags. First Spanish period, the British period, second Spanish period, Confederate and American. Scale model of the fort. Here's Pedro Menendez de Avilés. He was the founder of St. Augustine. This is William Carr. He was an Englishman, bound for Charleston, got shipwrecked and taken prisoner by the Spanish. Might be like the original gates. This dates to the 1600s, the Spanish coat of arms. The ravelin is a separate structure that's out front in front of the fort. We passed it by when we entered. Original coat of arms was removed from the ravelin in 1957 to preserve it. And this is the large wooden sallyport door that stood at the front entryway. It was removed for preservation in the 1950s.
This is the cell and the window that Kawakuchi is said to have escaped through.
For Spain citizens living in the area, it's free to see.
Sir Frederick Haldimand, Swiss mercenary. Soldiers through time. Deadly explosion in 1702 during the siege. Cannon blew up. Francisco Menendez. He was a African, and he took part in the retaking of Fort Mose in 1740, taking it back from the British. Bloody Mose. And a panorama of defending the fort in 1740 when Brigadier General and Governor James Oglethorpe of Georgia burned the city but failed to conquer the fort. This is Antonio Avero, woman who ran businesses and lots of real estate. So I think we're looking at the chapel here. This is Lopez de Mendoza Grajales, and he was the leading priest who came over with Menendez in 1565. This is the king's coffer, the treasury room. There's all the gold and silver and jewels will be kept here for safeguarding. So the United States takes over possession of the fort. This is Captain Richard Pratt. He was assigned to Fort Marion and guarded 74 American Indian prisoners. And this is Moiyahe Ist, Chief Heap of Birds. And he was at Fort Marion, served here. It was prison for American Indians from the Plains tribes. And he was the chief of the Southern Cheyenne people. So he was imprisoned here, 1875 to 1878. So the most famous prisoner here was Osceola. He fiercely resisted the United States policy of forced American Indian removal. His mother was an Upper Creek woman, his father a Scottish trader. This charismatic speaker urged Florida Seminoles to fight for their lands, taken captive while under a flag of truce, not too far from here, during the Second Seminole War. Osceola was briefly held here. He died 3 months later, locked up at Fort Moultrie in Charleston Harbor. George Brown used to give tours of the fort back in the late 1800s. Oh, this looks like a cavernous entry in here. Wow. Very dimly lit. I don't know why.
Hey, you believe in me.
This is Ignacio Daza. He was one of the engineers who was involved in the construction of the fort. This is the powder room. Make sure you get a good shot of this. And a little tunnel that I'm going to crawl through. I made it. Ah, okay.
Oops.
So another tight room, which is, you know, not small. I don't know what they put. It could be a dungeon. I mean, how else? What else would be in here?
It just took
Hey, the tidal toilets. If you gotta go. This colonial restroom had a twice daily natural flushing system. Incoming tides filled the pit with seawater and outgoing tides flushed waste out in the bay and onto the beach where the kids would swim. Has the scent of a toilet. Okay, this must be the ladies' room.